This beautiful archaeological garden at Kibbutz Ramat Rachel has evidence and excavations dating back to the ancient kings of Israel. And we are so happy to be joined by Professor Yuval Gadot of Tel Aviv University, who took part in an excavation more than 10 years ago. Seems like a long time, but that's very recent history compared to how old these structures are.
2,700 years old.
That's it.
Yes, yeah. This is an amazing site. You're right in that. And it was never really known that there is a site here. If you came here in the 1940s, 1950s, this was just a barren hill with a small kibbutz nearby, and then accidentally it was discovered.
Wow, it's so interesting. And I know that you took part in the excavations, in the 2000s, but it's true that they discovered all this in the 50s kind of by accident as they were building the water tower in the kibbutz, right?
Completely. There's no tradition that tells us anything about this place. And Yochanan Aharoni, who was a very young student then, and he became a big professor in archaeology, also because of this site, thanks to this site. He came to excavate in what we call salvage excavations, to make sure that nothing is hurt by the development. And then he saw stones that were laid and were organized in a fashion that is typical to the days of Judah, the kingdom of Judah, the kings of Judah, and so on. And he realized that he has to come back here. And he dug here from 59 to 62. Almost the entire site, realizing that there is a palace here. And this palace is unknown. It's not written in the Bible anything about it. It was all a big mystery.
Wow, that's just incredible. So for you to come in, and take part in the next wave of excavations, I imagine you were able to uncover even so much more.
Yep.
They were able to do in the 50s. So, what are you able to conclude based on the role this played during the time of the kings of Israel?
It's very clear that this place existed in the 7th, coming into the 6th century BCE. It's the time that Judah is a vassal kingdom to the Assyrian Empire. So these are the circumstances behind this place. Maybe it began to be first built in the days of Hezekiah, but definitely in the days of Menashe, his son, and then forward up to the end of the Judean kingdom.
Yeah.
Aharoni was convinced that this is the summer palace of the kings of Judah. In the city it's hot and it's noisy and so on. And here, although now it's very hot, in the summer usually the breeze comes in the afternoon and so on. So this will be a perfect place for kind of a retreat for the royal family. Over the years, we realized more and more that the Judean kings were not really independent. They were under the yoke of the Assyrian Empire, and there are enough signs here that tells us that this was probably a kind of a governing palace of the Assyrian Empire.
Wow,
it doesn't mean that there were Assyrians sitting here or somebody coming from Assyria. These can be also Judeans that work for the empire.
Right.
But the palace is expressing the political power, the needs, the wishes of the Assyrian rulers. And also, if you walked here around Ramat Rachel, in let's say 600 BCE, you will be exposed to the palace. This will be a kind of an annoying sight in the landscape for you, if you're Judean.
Right, of course, of course. Now explain, the rocks in these capitals I know have a lot of significance, showing evidence of how old it is.
It's we archaeologists first discovered these decorated stone capitals in the north, in places like Samaria, Megiddo, and so on, and there they are associated with the kingdom of Israel. Here in Judah, or here in Ramat Rachel, which is until now the largest concentration of these decorated stone capitals, it's coming a bit later. It's coming with the palace, somewhere like end of the 8th, beginning of the 7th century BCE. It's decorating probably the gate of the palace. It didn't stand like that freestanding, and it's all about show-off and abilities.
Yeah.
And using the stone as a capital and then decorating it. This is it's happening here for the first time. Later on, it will be kind of an Hellenistic and Roman habit of using decorated stone capitals.
Right, right. And the stones themselves. When you were saying that in the 50s that they saw some of these stones and they knew this was evidence of that time. What is it about the stones themselves?
First of all,
there's so many stones around here. How do you know what era they come from?
Yeah, Israel is not blessed with palaces and like you have in Egypt or in Iraq. So it's enough sometimes to see that the stones were worked. We call them ashlar stones, that somebody is working on the stone and then placing them, because most people in the Iron Age, in the times of the King of Judah, were using simply field stones and then building them with the wall. So the fact that they are worked is already a bonus. And then they are organized in a fashion that it's called head and stretches. It's a fashion that tells you that there are professional builders behind that. So everything is telling us about kind of an elite building style.
Right.
With these decorations and other decorations that were found, you say, okay, wow, if there are something like 11 stone capitals found here, this has to be a very important place.
Right, it's not a coincidence.
It's not a coincidence. If you compare it to Jerusalem itself, there are 2 or 3 known stone capitals like that. And Jerusalem, no doubt, was the capital.
Right.
So this was enough, I think, already in the 1950s to say,
this is a big deal.
This is a big deal. This is a palace. And then to ask yourself, why isn't this palace mentioned anywhere in the biblical script? Why we don't even know the name of the place? And these facts stay like that until today. I don't have any idea how this place was called.
Maybe because it was meant to be a villa of leisure, and it wasn't about the working. Maybe this was a place for them to
I think,
relax and hang out and get some spa treatments. Because there's mikvahs and everything here.
The mikvahs are later, but there are things of leisure. We see here remains. We found that we discovered a pit, that kind of a garbage pit that was filled with vessels and bones of a unique dinner that was held here, a kind of a festive gathering. And then after they probably said hey to the king or something like that, they couldn't throw them to the simple garbage. So it was kind of like a favisa, like a gniza. It was buried underneath the ground. And they were eating fish, and they were eating a very young lamb. So these are like a kind of very luxurious food. So this is one thing. The second thing why it's not mentioned, I think, is because if it's representing the empire, if you're a Judean, you don't really like this place. So sometimes to ignore is a better kind of statement of resistance than to say something and then curse. Just ignore it, don't mention it. Turn your back to it.
Interesting. Well, Professor, thank you so much. It really was so great to meet you and to take this in and experience it. And you have a very cool job.
Thank you very much. Yeah,
not bad to do this for a living, to teach the next generations and to earn a living.
No, not bad at all. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for the invitation.